Okay. All right. Maintenance agreements, and I truly believe this to be 100% correct, maintenance agreements are literally the foundation stone for profitable growth in the 21st century. During our time this afternoon, we're going to talk about why maintenance agreements are of value to you and to your customers. We can talk about how to market maintenance agreements, and we're actually going to go through a couple of customized threefold brochures that you can use when you're out there talking to the customer about the program. Of course, the first question that always comes up, and it's obviously a very good question, why do you as a contractor want to have a maintenance agreement program? Well, number one, consistent cash flow. There's two things that put companies out of business: improper labor pricing and cash flow. And obviously the beauty of a really good maintenance agreement program is that as you get more and more people on a maintenance agreement program and they're renewing throughout the year, over a period of time you get some pretty consistent cash flow, especially in your slower times. So that's a big benefit in terms of having a program. You get to schedule the work, pre-schedule the work. One of the beauties is when you have a situation where one of your techs only has maybe a 6-hour schedule tomorrow, you can send them out on a maintenance agreement or two, fill up their schedule. That keeps them busy, reduces your non-billable time, and it's a win-win for everybody. Thirdly, it nearly guarantees any service work done during the year, you're going to do it. Why? Because one of the benefits of having a maintenance agreement program as a customer is that you get a 10, 15, or 20% discount on labor and or materials if additional work's done during the year. Well, if they're getting a discount from you, why would they call anybody else? And the bottom line is they won't. Probably the biggest benefit, a long-term benefit, is number 4, and that's eventual replacement equipment. People usually buy from contractors and individuals that they have a relationship with. If you've been in their home once or twice a year, depending on what type of work you do, plus you're out there maybe for repair once a year, and that's gone on for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you're building a pretty good relationship with the customer. And now it's time to replace their equipment. Guess who they're going to call? Well, generally they're going to call you, often without a competing bid, and always at a higher profit margin than you get from a brand new customer. Number 5, it improves job security. Why? Because there's less ups and downs as you can fill in those gaps with the maintenance agreement work in terms of your technicians. And number 6, you got happier customers. Why? Because you're out there at their home or their property when things are running well. They're not down, they're not upset, they're not angry. You're just out there maintaining things and making sure it continues to work that way. So you got happy customers. And if a tech learns how to sell maintenance agreements, once they get comfortable doing that, guess what? Well, now they can start to talk about other add-on sales and other products and services that you have to offer. And then number 8, it substantially increases the selling price of your company. You say it again, it substantially increases the selling price of your company. Now, to be able to sell your company, 2 things got to be true. Number 1, it's got to be able to run without you. It's got to be kind of like a McDonald's situation. Who runs a McDonald's? Well, it's not the guy who owns it. He gets a manager who uses the all the rules and regulations and systems, and he runs the program. And it's the same way with our companies. If we're getting ready to sell them, it's got to be able to run without you. That means you got to put systems in place. So I want to encourage you, even at this point, it's a little bit of a side issue, but start documenting every single thing you do in the company. Have each person physically write down on pieces of paper exactly what they do, from everything from how do you answer the telephone, who puts the data into the system, when a sale is made, who handles the paperwork, just literally everything everybody does, and put it in a great big 3-ring notebook. And that process is going to take you probably anywhere from several months to a couple of years to actually get everything down right. But that has 2 advantages. One, if when the employee leaves for any reason, or maybe they're out for an extended period of time, somebody else knows how to do the work. And number 2, if you ever sell the company, all positions and the processes are documented. And the other thing that you have to have if you're going to sell your company, you got to have a significant amount of guaranteed income. Well, gee, new construction is definitely not guaranteed. Retrofit or replacement work isn't. About the only thing that's even close to guaranteed is your maintenance agreement program. And again, that's not 100%, but it's a lot closer than anything else we do. So when it comes to profit in selling your company, when you get ready to sell your company, $1 worth of profit is usually worth 2 to 3 times. In other words, if I got $100 worth of net profit, it's going to yield me $200 to $300 in terms of selling at the company when it's time. However, maintenance agreement income or profit is not valued at 2 to 3 times, it's valued at 6 to 7 times its value. Why? Because it's repetitive income. Or another good rule of thumb that's being used throughout the industry today is every maintenance agreement, active maintenance agreement that's in place is worth $400 when you get ready to sell the company. That means if I've got 1,000 maintenance agreements in place, I've got a value of $400,000 right off the bat. And many companies today are being sold strictly based on the number of maintenance agreements they have in place. And that's why our maintenance agreement program is so very important to us as contractors. So again, in summary, why do we want a maintenance agreement program? Consistent cash flow. You get to schedule the work. It reduces your non-billable time. Nearly guarantees any service work done during the year, you're going to get it. Long-term benefit is the eventual replacement of the equipment. You got employee job security because there's less ups and downs. You got happier customers. Tech learns how to sell maintenance agreements. They can sell other things. And again, it adds substantial value to your company if and when you decide to sell it. Now, a question that always comes up when I work with companies, especially one-on-one and we're going through the modeling process, is should we make our maintenance agreement program a totally separate department in our company? What I usually tell people is as you start out, just make it part of the service department. But when you get to the point where you've got somewhere around 300 to 400 maintenance agreements, that's the point where you've got close to a full-time tech taking care of that. That's when you want to think about making it a totally separate department. But to start out with, if you got only 100 or 200 agreements, then just make it part of your regular service department, at least initially. Now, in order to determine the pricing for your maintenance agreement, you've got to think about several different things. First of all, what services are going to be included? Why? Because that determines how much physical time it's going to take. One contractor's list may take 30 minutes to go through, another take an hour to go through, somebody else may take 2 hours to go through it. So what particular specific offerings are you going to have within your agreement, and therefore how long is it going to take you to do the work? And keep in mind, when you estimate the time to do the maintenance agreement, base it on how long it takes the technician to do it, not how long it takes you to do as an owner, because you're always going to do things much more quickly, much more efficiently than your tech is, again, because you've got a vested interest in it. So it would normally take you maybe 45 minutes. You might want to allow in your pricing process maybe an hour to do the job, wrench time. And again, what overhead costs are going to increase? We know some of the variable overhead costs are definitely going to go up, but we sell more maintenance agreements, what's going to happen? We're going to be on the road more, we're using more gasoline, we're using more maintenance on the vehicles. Now what overhead costs are going to go up? And then finally, how are you going to market the program? You just can't design it and hope they'll come. It doesn't start that way. So, what are you going to do from a marketing standpoint, and those costs got to be included in your overall pricing as well. Now, when it comes to selling maintenance agreements, I strongly encourage you to pay a commission to the seller of the maintenance agreement. Traditionally in our industry, people pay $5, $8, $10, $12, maybe $15. What I have found true across the country and all the different trades is if you want to really get your technicians involved in selling maintenance agreements, a $20 bill usually does it. They may slow down for $5, $10, or $15, but you start offering $20 for it, that's a significant amount of money. And they'll take the extra time to talk to the customer about it. So my recommendation is offer a $20 bill. And that has other benefits too if you have to split that between your CSR and your technicians themselves. Now get all the employees involved in selling maintenance agreements, not just the technicians. That's everybody who works for you. Why? Because everybody who works for you has friends, neighbors, relatives. They have people they go to church with. They're part of different organizations. And all of their friends have hot water heaters. They have heating systems. They have all the things that you sell. And there's not a reason in the world that you can't get all the people involved in the selling process. I'll give you kind of a cute example. Several years ago, we had a couple in class, and they were not doing maintenance agreements at the time. And they decided they were going to do that. And over the next period of months, husband and wife both worked in the business. And they would have discussions over dinner on how they were going to do it, what they were going to pay, and how they're going to do things like that. It was kind of the discussion in the evenings. And they finally settled on the fact that we're going to pay $20 for anybody who sells a maintenance agreement. And they went on to some other things. Well, it came time for the PTA meeting at school for their daughter, 14 years old. It was one of those PTA meetings you probably remember that go around to the different classes, and you spend about 5 or 8 minutes in each class and go on to the next one. You meet the teacher, basically. So this particular couple said they wandered into the first class, literally just got through the door. The teacher comes up to them and says, I need to talk to you after class. I'm thinking, oh boy, our daughter's in trouble. Okay. So she went through her little presentation. Everybody left. After everybody left, the teacher came back. The couple was sitting in the back of the room. She sat down with them and said, now, Susie's been telling me about this maintenance agreement program you got. I'd like to buy one of those. Well, what did Susie hear from her parents time and again? Hey, anybody who sells a maintenance agreement earns 20 bucks. She's been telling all her teachers, her friends about it. So get everybody involved in the sale of maintenance agreements, not just the technicians. And before commissions are paid, require something. Probably one of the neatest things I have seen was a very large plumbing company. Actually, they were Contractor of the Year that year. And they had, I think, either 6 or 7 plumbing service technicians. And they were selling average of about 5, 6 to 7 maintenance agreements a week, each one of the technicians. And they paid them $20 a piece for every one that they sold. But before they got their $20, you know what they had to do? They had to literally sit down and write a handwritten thank you note to the customer. Handwritten thank you note. And this is kind of how it worked. They had to come in early before starting time. They weren't paid for it. They just come a little bit early. The company would provide the thank you notes and the stationery and the postage and all that sort of thing. And some technicians were real good in English. They could write a great thank you, and other ones had a little more problem with that. So what the company did is they took about 5 or 6 handwritten or typed out thank you notes, put them on 4x6 cards, put them on little push pins up on the cork board. And if the technician chose to, they could just literally take one of those off the board, lay in front of them, and copy it word for word if they wanted to. But it had to be a handwritten thank you note, okay, before they received the $20. Now think about it. When's the last time you got a handwritten thank you note from anybody for anything? I mean, today what happens, you might get a text, maybe an email, but when's the last time you physically got a handwritten thank you note? And if you got one, you probably remembered it. Okay? Now, I've got 3 daughters. They're all married, all have children. My youngest daughter lives in Lexington, Kentucky. That's about 3 hours from where I live in Owensboro, Kentucky. That's important. About 7 or 8 years ago, when Kara got married, she got married in Owensboro, Kentucky, but they were going to be living in Lexington, Kentucky. Okay? She got engaged. Right after she got engaged, it was going to be about a year before they got married, she came to me and said, Dad, I'd like to do something just a little bit different at the wedding. I said, what's that? She said, we got this trolley in Owensboro. I said, I'd like to see if we can rent the trolley for the evening, and the church service was going to be in one area of town, the reception was going to be in another, and just kind of let the trolley run back and forth all evening, and let people ride on. It'd be kind of fun. We could decorate a little bit. So fine. Let me check with the city. Number one, see if they even rent it, and if they do, if it's reasonable. So I called the city of Owensboro. Sure enough, they rent the trolley. I asked them how much. It was very, very reasonable. I said, okay, what about this particular date? It was almost a year out. I said, is it available that date? And I said, sure is, Mr. Grandy. And I said, great. Would you put my name on that little spot? And great, just confirm it. What do I need to do? Sign a contract, send you a deposit? I mean, what's the best thing to do? So don't worry about it, Mr. Grandy. Your name's on the calendar. You're okay. I said, really? I said, yeah. Well, I said, don't worry about it. Well, anytime somebody tells me not to worry about something, I worry about it. So next month, I called him again. I said, hey, I'm just checking. I just want to make sure my name was still on the calendar. Yes, Mr. Grandy, your name's still on the calendar. Called him the 3rd month, same thing. Mr. Grandy, your name is on the calendar. You don't need to keep calling us. Your name is on the calendar. So, okay. So I stopped calling. Came the day of the wedding. 4 hours before we were supposed to start the wedding, guess what happened? I get a call from the city of Owensboro. Mr. Grandy, we're very sorry, but the trolley won't be there today. I said, what do you mean the trolley won't be? I had that thing scheduled for a year. What's going on? So, well, the trolley driver's up in Indiana. He can't get back in time. We're very, very sorry, but he's just not going to make it. You can imagine what's going through my mind. My daughter's thinking we're going to have a trolley running back and forth, and I don't know how to get the wedding party to point A to point B. So I hustled around. I set up a limo real quick. I got down to the wedding about an hour, hour and a half before we're supposed to start. And I'm sitting there talking to my future father-in-law. Now, unbeknownst to me at the time, my future father-in-law's brother His brother is the city manager of Owensboro. Well, to make a very long story short, the trolley showed up on time. Okay? But that's not the story. Trolley showed up on time. Everything went smoothly. 3 months after the wedding, my daughter, who lives in Lexington, 3 hours away, got a letter from the trolley driver. Now, how he even got her address, I have no idea. But he wrote them a full-page letter. Talked about how much he enjoyed the time. He'd never done anything like that before. They pulled him in at the last minute. He'd never done that before. Loved talking to the people, seeing everybody dressed up. Hoped he got to again. Just wanted you to know how much I really, really enjoyed doing that for the trolley for your wedding. When she showed me that letter, it was pathetic. I mean, the words were spelled wrong. The grammar was terrible. The lines were going up and down. But you know where that letter is today? It's sitting on their refrigerator. Why? Because somebody took the time to write a handwritten thank you note and say thank you. And that's what we're talking about. You get your text to write a handwritten thank you note to the customer after they've sold a maintenance agreement, it makes a difference. And by the way, make the payment of commissions a big deal. Don't just put the commission as part of their check. You know, maybe once a month have pizza or something like that, have all the techs come in to lunch, all the employees gather around, give them pizza, and give out the checks in front of everybody else. There's great value in that. There's something about Bill getting a check for $200 and Sam getting one for 25 bucks. And guess what? They start talking to each other. How did you do that? And it becomes competitive even inside the company. So make a big deal out of it when it comes to paying the commissions. Now, traditionally in the trades industry, we have 90 slow days a year. And roughly half our time is billable. So if you do the math, that means we've got roughly 360 hours a year that we need to fill with something, and that something's got to be maintenance agreements. Now, if it takes me an hour and a half wrench time to do a maintenance agreement, that means I need 240 maintenance agreements in place to fill that dead time. If it took me an hour, then I'm going to need 360 of them. If it took 2 hours, it's going to take me 180 of them. And there's a little calculator that you can use within our software, helps you decide how many maintenance agreements you need as a company. What I would suggest is figuring out how many maintenance agreements each technician needs to keep them busy throughout the year. Let's say it's that 240 figure. And I would literally create a board and I would keep track of how many maintenance agreements each individual technician has sold. And the reason is when things get slow, then you look at the board. Gee, we got 3 service techs and one of them's going to have to be laid off for a few days because we don't have a lot of work. Gee, Bill's got 340 maintenance agreements he sold. Sam's got 215, and William over here has only got 75. Well, guess who's going home first? The guy didn't sell enough maintenance agreements to keep himself busy. So make it a competitive type of thing, kind of a goal in the middle of that process. Again, creating their own workload so they stay busy throughout the year. Okay. Now, from a marketing standpoint, I want to make a couple of suggestions. First one's going to sound kind of crazy to you. I want you to give every employee, not just the technicians, every employee in your company, give them a maintenance agreement on their home. Don't let them do their own. Make sure somebody else does it so you get kind of a check, double check against the quality of work. Now, why do I want to give one? Because you cannot impart what you don't possess, and you cannot sell what you don't believe in. What's going to happen when that technician is talking to the customer about all the wonderful benefits of having a maintenance agreement program on their equipment, and then that golden question comes up? You know, William, that's a great idea. I'm kind of interested in that. By the way, William, do you have one of those on your equipment? No, but you know, it's really good. I just told you all the benefits. That's why you ought to buy one. Okay. But you know, it's entirely different when that technician has had one for a number of years. You know what? I do have a maintenance agreement. I've had one on my equipment for the last several years. I've never had an emergency breakdown. We're comfortable all the time. You know what? If it's good for you, it's good for me. So I encourage you to give one to everybody in your organization. Okay? If you don't want to absorb the cost in it, put it in your overhead, make it part of your hourly rate. But give one as part of the initial part of your marketing program. And keep 2 things in mind when it comes to marketing. People only buy for one of 2 bottom line reasons. One of 2 bottom line reasons. Number 1, fear of loss. Number 2, hope of gain. It's what am I going to get if I buy something, What am I going to lose if I don't? Now that goes for tennis shoes, automobiles, and maintenance agreements as well. That's the bottom line everybody uses to determine whether they're going to buy something or not. So when it comes to our maintenance agreements, what are you going to get and what are you not going to get if you don't have a maintenance agreement? Well, if you do have a maintenance agreement with our company, you're going to get a discount on labor materials if additional work is done. Your equipment's going to last longer because it's properly maintained. You're going to get priority service if something breaks down. You go to the top of the list with the other priority customers. You're going to get the routine maintenance that you should have on the equipment anyway, and it's going to be a lot safer operation. Okay? I'm going to come back to that thought in a minute. If you don't have a maintenance agreement, what's going to happen? Well, gee, I'm going to have to pay the normal repair pricing if something breaks down. I'm going to have to replace my equipment faster because it's not properly maintained. I'm going to have to find a serviceman, and when I do, things are going to be busy. I'm going to go way down the list in the middle of that process. Now, I want to throw a thought out here for you. Some of you are on flat rate pricing, some of you not. Some of you charge for the diagnostic fee on that, some of you waive it. But if you charge for the diagnostic fee, just kind of put this as a thought in the back of your mind. The thought is this, let's keep the number simple. Let's say my diagnostic fee is $50. Okay? So now, my maintenance agreement, now, we've got to back up a step or two. If you're going to do what I'm talking about, when you put your model together to set your pricing, if you do not put the diagnostic fees that you collect in your model, that means your hourly rate will be a little bit higher, but it also means 100% of the income that you get from your diagnostic fee is pure profit. Okay? So to do what I'm talking about, you do not put that in your hourly rate. In other words, you leave the diagnostic income out. Now, that's 100% profit. That means if I have a customer who gets upset for whatever reason, I can waive the diagnostic fee. It doesn't cost me anything because it wasn't part of my pricing. But the real beauty is when it comes to selling maintenance agreements. Now, Mrs. Jones, you know what? You're not only going to save 10, 15, or 20% on this particular repair. You're not only going to get routine maintenance. You're not only going to get priority service. But you know what? We're going to waive your diagnostic fee as well anytime you have a service call. Well, gee, now they saved the $50 on the diagnostic fee plus the repair. They've saved enough to almost pay for the whole maintenance agreement right off the bat. Or you can offer half the 50% discount on diagnostic fees. But if you want to sell maintenance agreements, that's a neat way to do it. And it really, really works because there's enough real value in there for the customer. Okay? And the bottom line is people buy maintenance agreements for one reason and one reason only, and that's peace of mind. And when if something happens, they've got somebody they can call to take care of whatever needs to be done. Now, the question always comes up is, well, gee, why haven't people bought maintenance agreements before? There's several reasons. Number one, too complicated. I mean, I have literally seen 2- and 3-page maintenance agreements with small type. You go to the back page, there's 12 exclusions on the back, 2 places to sign. I mean, it looks like a legal document. It scares people to death. I promise you they won't sign it. Problem for not selling maintenance agreements in the past, at least, is the customer didn't think there was a real discount. This is before flat rate pricing for the most part, or if you're on time and material. Because what goes through the customer's mind is this, well, yeah, I'm a maintenance agreement customer. I'm supposed to get 15% discount. So the tech comes out, he does the repair, he goes out to the truck, he figures all the paperwork, he adds 15% to the price, he comes back in, shows the customer the price, takes the 15% off. Well, gee, I'm paying what everybody else is paying. Now, that may not be the way it really works, but that's perception from the customer standpoint. Now, with flat rate pricing, that disappears because they can see the difference in the normal repair price and the discounted price for a maintenance agreement customer. And the final reason people haven't bought one, they just simply haven't been offered one yet. I promise you that is evaporating quickly. Utilities are getting into selling maintenance agreements. The Home Depots of this world are getting into it. I don't know if you've heard any of American Home Shield's ads on the radio across the country. They're selling maintenance agreements on all types of equipment, including appliances. Okay, somebody is going to offer your customer a maintenance agreement, and when they do, they're going to be tied into that company for an extended period of time. Now, when it comes to our maintenance agreement program, keep it simple. Keep it simple. Offer 3 things and 3 things only, unless you're going to get into the diagnostic thing we just talked about. So they're going to get annual or semi-annual maintenance of the equipment. Secondly, they're going to get discount on labor and or materials if additional work is needed during the year. Thirdly, they're going to get priority service if something breaks down. And again, if you choose to and you charge a diagnostic fee, depending on how you set up your pricing, you can waive the diagnostic fee, which is a huge benefit right up front. It'll close a lot of sales. Okay. And keep in mind, if the customer can't read through your maintenance agreement and fully understand it in 30 seconds or less, they're not going to buy it. In today's rush world, if they can't understand something quickly and make a decision on that, chances are they're not going to purchase it from you. Now, when it comes to your threefold brochure that we're going to show you a couple examples of here in a moment, keep a couple things in mind. You want to clearly state the benefits, you want to clearly state the investment or the cost, and you want a very simple way to sign up. In other words, keep it bug level, keep it simple. Why? Well, as it says under the caption on the right-hand side here, the average American, believe it or not, the average American reads at a 6th grade level. Not about you, I was shocked when I saw that. But I wasn't near as shocked as the person who in one of my classes raised her hand when we were talking about this particular thing, and she was talking about the USA paper, USA Today. Now, the color paper that's a national paper, we're all familiar with it. You know what grade level it's written on? 3rd grade. 3rd grade, okay? So what's that telling me? Keep your brochure simple, easy to understand, okay? What's a great way to test it? Hey, get a 4, 5, 6 graders, get a couple of pizzas, have them come over to your house with your children, show them your maintenance agreement program, let them read through it and ask them to explain what it means. And if they can explain it, you've got a great program, easy description. If not, make it simpler. Make it bug level. Okay. Now, this is an example of a HVAC, and we're going to look at a plumbing one here in a moment. The front on the right just says the name of the company, address, etc. The center panel on the back talks about the cost of the maintenance agreement and can you give them a discount if you have additional units. Obviously, the answer is yes. Why? We don't have any travel time in between. Without the travel time, I can cut the price 10 or 15 or maybe even 20% and still make more money than I would have before. The inside of the brochure is pretty straightforward. Talks about why do I want a maintenance agreement program. It's going to reduce my fuel bills, talks a little bit about that. Prolongs the equipment life, talks a little bit about that. Maximizes my safety, talks a little bit about that. In the center, keeping it very clean, very simple, very easy to understand. You're going to get an annual or semi-annual check of the equipment. You're going to get a 10, 15, or 20% discount on labor and or materials. And you're going to get priority service. Simple, easy to understand. Bottom line, peace of mind. And over to the right, if you like to buy an agreement, this is one system price, 2 system price. Makes it very simple. You're interested in signing up, just getting some information on it, and a very simple way to sign up and hopefully put it on that credit card as well. Now, that's the HVAC one. That's really quick, but you've got a handout that's got those sheets in it, so you can look at them later on if you choose to. Now, this is the plumbing maintenance agreement. Let's look at the inside first. The left-hand panel is very similar to the HVAC. Down at the bottom, what are the benefits? Get the annual check of the plumbing system, 10% discount, priority emergency service, peace of mind, gives you the pricing. Over on the right-hand side, however, on this one, it's going to tell you what we're going to do. What are we going to do? We're going to dye test your toilets. We're going to check all of your faucets for leaks. We're going to check all exposed hot and cold water lines. We're going to look at your sink piping. We're going to get all your fixtures and drains are going to be checked. We're going to check your washing machine hoses. Does anybody know how long the standard factory-provided washing machine hoses are designed to last? About 5 to 6 years, period. Over the last few years, both my sister in Maryland and a good friend of mine in Denver, Colorado, both had their washing machine hoses burst in their basement. Neither was home, and it flooded their basement. When the guy came out to look at things and clean it up, he's talking, you know what? These are only guaranteed for 5 or 6 years. Well, if I'm a plumbing contractor, what am I going to carry on my truck? Yeah, I'm going to carry some of those stainless steel lifetime hoses that will never wear out, never leak, and I'm going to sell one with every single job I'm on. We're going to sell the lawn, check the lawn faucets. We're going to check and tag your shutoff valves. Do you have any idea how few customers have any idea where their shutoff valve is for their water system? It's one of the things you're going to show them while they're there. Okay. We're going to do the maintenance on their hot water heater, both gas or electric, depending on what they have. We're going to bio-clean their drains. This is another tip for you. We're going to bio-clean their drains. We're going to talk about all the benefits of bio-clean and similar type product. We're going to tell them that, hey, a can like this, and you show them a can, maybe cost you normally retail 15 or 20 bucks. It's half full. Hey, I'm going to put some in your drains, Mrs. Jones. You know what? Why don't I just give you the rest of the can? Now, every month or two, just put a little bit in your drains. It'll keep them nice and clean. And that's a $20 or $30 value. Just take it. Man, they feel really good about that. And they start using it, and guess what? Their drains are going to be clean. You won't have any problems there. And they have the opportunity to sell them the BioClean later on as well. Now, there's a couple things up in the upper right. These are just things to think about if you chose to, kind of a special bonus for your service agreement customers. If you choose to, you can put in a water alarm system under the hot water heater. You can have water treatment in there. You can have CO2 alarm detectors. Put them in free of charge. Okay? That's just part of being a maintenance agreement customer. But if you ever cancel, guess what? Those things come out. Now, that's a $750 value or whatever happens to be what you provide. If you choose to, you can buy that. That's not a problem. But we're going to provide it free of charge for a maintenance agreement customer. And that will lock them in for a long period of time. Then if we look at the front of the brochure, obviously on the right it's just the name of the company and the phone number. The center panel on the back talks about helpful hints to reduce your water bill. And again, the left-hand panel is a very simple way to sign up. Okay? So I suggest you create something using that information, put it in your own format, but something that you can actually point to and hand the customer while you're on the job. Now, once you've got your three-fold brochure together, what are you going to do with it? Well, there's several things. First of all, direct mail it to our current customer base. Secondly, we're going to include a copy of that three-fold brochure with every proposal that we present. We're going to leave a copy on every service call, even if the customer's not there, leave one on their table. And then make great handouts at home shows and expos and things like that. Now, let's look at each one in a little bit more detail. First thing I would do if I was starting a maintenance agreement program, I would do a direct mail piece to every customer within my customer base, active customer. Now, you may have 6,000 people in your customer base, but if they haven't used you in the last 2 to 3, maybe maximum 4 years, that's not an active customer. Talking about people who use you on a pretty regular basis. Now, when you send it out, put it on your company stationery. Make sure you do 2 things. Number 1, up at the top of the piece of paper, have a header. And at the bottom, have a PS. What they found out is when people open a letter, they always look at the header, they always look at the PS, and they may or may not read what's in between. So what you see on top is what? New maintenance agreement program. Who's it for? Our current customers. Little PS at the bottom, look at the right. It says as a valued customer, look at the coupon on the right, it'll save you money. Whatever you're going to pay in terms of your commission, $5, $10, or $20 like we talked about, offer that discount on your direct mail piece. It doesn't cost you anything because you're not going to pay a commission on it. So whatever your commission is, offer that as a discount on your direct mailer. Now this is actually a letter that Bill Kennard that works with me, some of you probably know him up in Green Bay. He actually received this from the Culligan people, trying to get him to purchase a maintenance agreement on his water system. And again, it was a direct mail piece. It talks about everything that they're going to do. It talks about scheduling an appointment. You can call the office. It's got an email on there. It's got their website. You can write to websites today and sign up for a maintenance agreement. If you've not got that on your website, consider doing it soon. It's amazing how many people will sign up right off the bat. And again, there's 2 types of customers out there. We've got the older generation, which is kind of like myself and especially my wife. She won't do anything without paper and reading, etc. Younger generation wants to do everything electronically. They don't want to see a piece of paper. So you've got to be able to offer your product and your service in both formats. But this allows the customer to call in, email in, or go to your website to sign up for that maintenance agreement if they choose to. Now back to our direct mail piece. Let's say we got 3,000 customers in our customer base, and let's say it's going to cost us 65 cents a piece between the stationery, the three-fold brochure, the postage, the envelope, about 65 cents a piece for each one of them. If we mail it out to 3,000 customers in round figures, that's about $2,000. If I get a 5% return, that's 150 maintenance agreement customers, 150 at $129.95. That means we got gross income of right at $20,000 a year. That's a pretty good return on a $20,000 or $2,000 investment. Now, if you've read much on the different percentages in terms of direct mail, this is probably what you've heard. If you bulk mail to total strangers, you should theoretically get a 0.5 to 1.5% return. Now, I've done several direct mailings over my career to total strangers. I have never, ever gotten over a 0.25% return. There's so much coming through the world today and in their mailbox that unless you know them, they're probably not even going to look at it, much less sign up. However, if you bulk mail to current customers, people who know you and use you already, you should get at least a 3 to 5% return. And if you want to make it really, really effective, you only have to send out 200 pieces of mail in order to get a bulk mailing price. So what I suggest is send out 200 at a time, and then within 3 to 4 days after you've mailed it up, either have somebody in the office or hire a temp and do a follow-up call. Hey, Ms. Jones, did you get our mailer on a new maintenance agreement program? Talk about it a little bit. If you follow up with a physical call like that, you should get up to 15% or higher return. Takes a little longer, but you get a lot better results. Telephone on hold is something else I want to strongly suggest. I'm sure some of you use one of those, some of you do not. There's lots of different ones out there today. Here at the office we use one called Commercials on Hold. That's a national one. But it doesn't matter. Get somebody who does a professional on-hold system for you for two different reasons. Number one, I don't care if you're one-man operation working out of your house, you put somebody on hold like that, you instantly sound like a professional organization. Professional organization. And the other thing is you get to script what's going to be said. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm going to script my maintenance agreement program. I'm going to talk about all the benefits of it, how it's helped different customers, da-da-da-da-da. So if I have a customer who calls in and maybe it's been 3 hours since the phone is rung, I'm going to take that customer and say, by the way, Ms. Jones, going to put you on hold just for a second. We'll take her on just a second. I'll be right back to you. Now, put them on hold, let them start listening to the message. Don't put them on hold for more than 10 or 15 seconds because you don't want to get the customer angry. But you know what they're listening to on the other end. Then when you pick back up, you say, by the way, Ms. Jones, I apologize, couldn't get to you right away. By the way, did you know we just started a brand new maintenance agreement program? You know what? I just heard a little bit of that on your on hold message. Oh, really? And you start a conversation. Okay. It's a great marketing tool for selling maintenance agreements. A few more marketing ideas. Insert a brochure with every proposal. Have a section on your customer response card. Hey, do you have a maintenance agreement with our company? You want to mention it in your quarterly or semi-annual newsletter, both electronic and physical. And have a printed block on your invoice. Next time you print your invoices up, just have a little space on there that says, hey, by the way, do you have a maintenance agreement with our company? A little red question mark up there. You know, over and over and over again. And in terms of incentive programs, create some. Pay the several maintenance agreement, $5, $10, $15. Again, I recommend $20. You can have a bonus for the top maintenance agreement seller of the month. Departmental goals, give them incentives. When the whole company maybe sells the first 100, take them all out to dinner. Sell another 100, do it again. You make it fun. And be creative. And again, this is kind of a little side item, but be creative. Make an effort to know your employees. Not just when they come to work and what they do. What do they enjoy doing when they're not at work? Like to go to ball games, like to go to the movies, like to go out to dinner, like to go out of town with the kids or without the kids. Now, what do they enjoy doing? And then make a significant effort to catch one of your employees, all of your employees for that matter, doing something right. And when they've done an outstanding job of something, then reward them uniquely. What am I talking about? Let's say Joe the technician went out at 2 o'clock in the morning on an emergency call. Customer called in, talked about what a great job he did. That's when you send a letter to their spouse. Hey, appreciate you letting your husband go out at 2 o'clock in the morning. He did a great job. We got wonderful feedback from the customer. Appreciate your patience in that whole process. And by the way, here's a $50 gift certificate to a local restaurant. You start doing something like that with all your different employees, you will build a family atmosphere that says, I care about you. So give some serious thought to that. Now, when it comes to pricing, there's two distinct directions in terms of how you price maintenance agreement. One is to be the low guy in town, and one is to price for profit. Now, if you've been to many of my programs, you know my objective is always to price for profit. But there's valid reasons to do both. Number one, the low price guy. I mean, I know a guy on the West Coast, he's got literally thousands of plumbing maintenance agreements, thousands of them. You know how much he charges? $29.95, $29.95. I mean, that doesn't even pay for his time that he has to drive out there and drive back. But his theory is if he gets into enough homes, guess what? We'll find something wrong, something broken, and we'll get some work out of it. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't necessarily want to do that, but that's a logical way to do things. Okay. Now, the other guy, price for profit. On the low price guy, he's going to be in your house maybe for 10 or 15 minutes. If I'm pricing for profit, I'm going to be there for a good hour at least. And I promise you, if I spend an entire hour with the customer, we're going to have opportunity to look at add-on sales. We're going to talk about repairs that need to be done. We're going to generate some extra money there, as well as giving them a very, very thorough maintenance agreement program. So there's two different directions to go. It's just a matter of what you want to do. When it comes to your final price on your maintenance agreement, always round it off to the nearest $5. In other words, if your pricing comes up to $127, make it $129.95. If your price comes up to $152, make it $154.95. Always go up to the next $5 increment. Because what they found over the years is people think in $5 increments. Now, $2 or $3 may not make a big difference there, but you sell hundreds of those, it makes a big difference on the bottom line. And upfront pricing, flat rate pricing, that is a super tool for selling maintenance agreements. It's easy for the technician to talk about. It's easy for the customer to understand. They can see the savings. Customer gets immediate savings on that particular call, and the tech earns a commission. It's a win-win-win all the way around. And again, the customer immediately sees the benefits and can reap those benefits at the same time, and especially if you tie in a portion of or all of your waiving of the diagnostic fee. And most importantly, make it easy for the customer to pay. Make it easy for the customer to pay. Okay? If it's an expensive agreement, you might want to pay it quarterly or semi-annually, or annually is what usually happens in most of the industry. Another thing that's happening within our industry over a period of time, over the last several years especially, is to get the customer to allow you to charge their credit card on a monthly basis. That is dynamite. Why? Because of the guy on the right. I listened to a presentation by one of the best financial counselors in the country years ago, and in the middle of his presentation, he made a comment. He said, I will not take on a new customer unless they agree to an automatic withdrawal out of their checking account on a monthly basis. Now, the individual can choose the money, the amount can be $25, $50, $100, or $200, whatever it is, but it has to be an automatic withdrawal out of their account. He said, the reason I do that is because people are lazy. Why do I mean that? Well, gee, at the end of the month, the couple's talking to each other and said, you know what, we really can't afford this $200 coming out each month. We need to cancel that. But what happens? They never get around to it. And they save another $200 this month, another $200 next month, and pretty soon they got a substantial amount of money. Well, historically, that's what's been going on in our industry. People who are set up on a direct charge to their credit card tend to never, ever cancel. Never, ever cancel. And that eliminates the whole process of renewal. Again, if it's credited off, put on your credit card each month, all you got to do is call the customer once a year or twice a year, depending on your trade. Say, hey, it's time to come out and do your annual maintenance agreement. You just continue it. You never renew it. You don't have to go through that process. Now, if you're not going to do that, at least use what we call the assumed renewal. Just call them up and say, hey, Ms. Jones, it's time for your annual maintenance agreement. Would next Thursday at 2 o'clock be okay? We'll just pick up a check when you're there. Just assume they're going to renew it. Don't say, gee, would you like to buy another maintenance agreement? You just started the whole process of sales all over again. And if you're not going to pay the commission the second time around, if the tech isn't going to go out and renew the maintenance agreement, then you can give them that commission as a discount to sign up again this year. Okay? A couple thoughts in terms of renewals. The last thing I want to talk about here is a thing called the law of money. The law of money. Now, I didn't think this up. Actually, a contractor by the name of Jim Brown in Martin Home, Arkansas thought this up. We have a program, some of you are familiar with it, called the Profit University Audio Series. And each month, it's on a different business topic by a different national speaker. We've been doing that for over 20 years. Jim Brown, the guy who coined the law of money, did our second or third tape, so this is almost 20 years ago. And the definition of the law of money is this: any significant size budget can and will absorb every dollar you put in it. So when Jim was doing his presentation, it was entitled Doing Business in a Small Community. And on the back of his tape, the last part of his tape, he talked about the fact that he decided to start a maintenance agreement program. He never had one before. And again, this was 20 years ago, so he did the math. All his overhead was already covered. So he could sell a maintenance agreement for, round figures, $100. And he could make a $50 profit on that $100 that he sold. Okay? Now, Jim understood the law of money. Jim understood if he took that $100 and he put it in his general checkbook, what was going to happen to it? It gets absorbed. It's gone. End of the year, he'd see a nice accounting report that said, hey, you did $25,000 worth of maintenance agreements, and there's no more money in the checkbook than there was before. The law of money took it out. So before he sold his first maintenance agreement program, you know what he did? He went to the person who handles the money in their office. He said, this is what I want you to do. He said, we get a $100 check in. I want you to deposit that check that day. Not the end of the week, not the end of the month. Deposit it that day. And at the same time, write out a check for $50, the profit portion of it, and put it in a savings account. If we get 3 checks in for maintenance agreements, write a check for $150. Put it in a savings account. When that savings account grows to this level right here, I want you to take 30 minutes off, drive to the bank, buy a 12-month CD with it, and every time when you get to that level, buy another one, buy another one, buy another one. Now, Jim can say this next part a lot more comically than I can. I can see him doing it, though. He said, you know, sometimes things get kind of quiet in Mountain Home, Arkansas, not a whole lot going on. So on days like that, he said, I like to go back to my house. My house has got a great big screened-in front porch on the front of it. And right in the middle of that screened-in porch is this really comfortable rocking chair. So what I like to do is I sit down in that rocking chair and I rock back and forth, back and forth. So you know what I like to do when I'm rocking back and forth? I like to thumb the CDs. Sounds like this. Back and forth. Back and forth. He said, you know what? I've been selling maintenance agreements now for about 8 or 9 years. It's kind of like it used to be, but it's a little bit different. First year or two was like this. Back and forth. Back and forth. But now, 7, 8, 9 years later, it's more like this. Back and forth. Back and forth. Said, you know what? Makes me very happy. Makes me very happy. If you don't do anything else I talk about today, I want you to do this next thing for yourself. There is not a contractor listening to this presentation today that would miss $100 out of your general checkbook at the office. Somehow you would survive. Go to the person excuse me, who handles the money and instruct them to write a check for $100 once a week out of the general checkbook and put it in a mutual fund for you. Just automatically do it. Okay? Don't ask any questions, just do it. If you put $100 in a checkbook in your mutual fund every single week for a year, that's $5,200 plus growth. And the average mutual fund earns about 12% average year after year after year. Okay? If you put $100 a month in and look at that chart on the right, within 5 years, with growth, you'd have over $35,000. Within 10 years, you'd have almost $100,000. I cannot tell you how many contractors have come up to me at national conventions, stopped me in the hall and said, you know what, Tom? That is the best thing I ever did for myself. That's the best thing I ever did for myself. Don't do anything else I did today. Do that one thing.
All right, thanks, Tom, for the great presentation. We actually do have a couple questions. Some of them you did go over in your presentation, but it doesn't hurt to ask them again. So what is the typical conversion rate between a physical service agreement brochure versus a digital service agreement brochure?
Think about it for a moment. When is a physical maintenance agreement normally sold? It's sold when you have the technician in front of the customer who has just done the repair, who's got more credibility with the customer than anybody else in the world at that point. It's the technician themselves. So most of them are sold when the technician is physically standing there with the customer. The nice thing about having a physical brochure you can hand them is it recaps everything you talked about. So if they go ahead and purchase one, they got a recap of what they did. If they need to explain it to their husband or the wife after they made the presentation, at least they've got something that kind of summarizes it. So I prefer physically handing them one as opposed to just emailing somebody a copy.
And we got another question here. We only have 2 technicians. What incentive programs would you suggest for our technicians that doesn't create a negative competitive atmosphere?
I'm not sure what you're talking about in terms of a negative atmosphere. Again, giving them the commissions, I suggest $20. One of the best teamwork situations in that is if you've got somebody who answers the phone or a CSR, what I suggest you do is when the customer calls in for service, one of the first questions I would ask when they're there, I would say, by the way, Mr. and Ms. Jones, do you pay full price or are you one of our discount customers? Well, guess what the next question is? How do I become a discount customer? Well, you talk about the service agreement a little bit, maintenance agreement. The CSR or the person who answers the phone kind of gives them an overview of it. So by the way, when our technician comes out, he can give you some more details on it. And if you choose to, you can sign up at that point and save some money on today's call. And in that case, with the $20 commission, then what most companies do is they split the commission between the CSR and the technician. If they will start to work together, they will literally sell maintenance agreements up and down the road quickly. That works really, really, really well. And that's not competitive, that's working together as team members.
Awesome. And one more question. What is a KPI list?
KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. It's basically the goals that you're shooting for in your service department, like your conversion rate, like average billable dollars per hour, how many maintenance agreements did you sell, and things like that. There's 24 of them. And that free listing lists all 24 of the key performance indicators, has a full description with each one of them. If you can just start to track 1 or 2 of those in your in your service department, setting the goals and rewarding the technicians when they hit those goals can obviously substantially increase your productivity and profitability.